Mira Dawson was invisible. A brilliant analyst buried beneath baggy cardigans and low self-esteem, she was the kind of woman people forgot was in the room. Until the day she decided she wouldn't be ignored anymore. With a new dress, a quiet fire, and a bold sense of purpose, she walked into the office like a woman who belonged, and caught the attention of everyone, including the one man no one dared to look at twice. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Mira Dawson sat at her desk, fingers flying over the keyboard as the soft clack of keys filled her quiet corner of the office. A half-empty coffee mug sat beside her monitor, steam long faded. Post-it notes decorated the edge of her screen, each scribbled with formulas, reminders, and codes that only someone fluent in corporate data analytics would understand. It was 8:47 a.m., and she was already on her second report of the day. The office of Raintech Corporation bustled beyond the frosted glass walls of the analytics floor. Sharp heels clicked on polished tiles. Laughter rang from the marketing wing. A group of interns rushed past in tailored blazers and bright lipstick, chatting about weekend plans Mira had never been invited to. She adjusted her oversized cardigan and glanced at her reflection in the dark windowpane beside her. Same tired ponytail. Same thick-rimmed glasses. No makeup. Just Mira. She sighed and returned to her screen. She wasn't ugly. She didn't think that. But in an office full of polished, high-powered people who seemed to have stepped out of glossy magazines, she might as well have been a ghost. Not that anyone was unkind. People were polite, courteous, but no one really saw her. "Mira, you always turn your reports in scarily early," said Tanya, a bubbly HR coordinator, as she passed by her desk. "Seriously, it's like you don't even sleep." Mira gave a shy smile. "Numbers are comforting. They don't lie." Tanya chuckled and wandered off. "No invitation for lunch. No casual, wanna come to happy hour?" Just a comment, gone in seconds. She turned back to her computer, chewing the inside of her cheek. Mira had always been this way, diligent, reliable, quiet. She didn't hate her life. She had her small apartment, her cat, a growing collection of fantasy novels, and her favorite corner booth at the cafe across the street. But there were nights when silence felt louder than usual. When scrolling past couples on social media made her feel like she was living in grayscale. And the truth was, she noticed people. The confident women who strode through the lobby in pencil skirts and heels. The soft perfume trails they left behind. The way people turned to greet them. She admired them secretly. She admired how their voices didn't shake during meetings. How they took up space, unafraid, unapologetic. She had always told herself that she wasn't built for that. That some women were simply wired for visibility, and others were meant for the sidelines. That belief had become a quiet little prison. Then, as she sat typing the final lines of her quarterly analysis, she heard a sudden ripple of energy behind her. A murmur. A pause in footsteps. Whispers. She turned her head slightly and saw him. Daniel Rain. CEO. Billionaire. Enigmatic. The kind of man who didn't just walk, he arrived. Tall, sharp-jawed, always in a tailored black suit and an air of calm authority. He was flanked by two board members, speaking in low tones as he moved across the floor with his usual calculated ease. Mira held her breath. He passed right by her desk. Didn't even glance in her direction. Of course he didn't. She exhaled slowly and looked back at her screen, her heart sinking in a way she didn't fully understand. That night, in her apartment, Mira curled up on her couch with a bowl of reheated pasta. She wore an old t-shirt from college and watched a rom-com playing on low volume in the background. Her laptop sat on the coffee table, open to a half-finished presentation. As she absently scrolled through her phone, a YouTube thumbnail caught her eye. Transform your confidence. It starts with how you show up. Something about the title tugged at her. She clicked. A confident woman appeared on screen, vibrant and unapologetically feminine, talking about style, presence, self-worth. Mira watched. And then she watched another. And another. The dishes remained undone. Her pasta went cold. But something else warmed, a tiny spark in her chest. As midnight ticked by, she found herself in front of the mirror, still in her t-shirt, studying her reflection. No makeup. Bare face. No fancy clothes. Just Mira. And yet she tilted her head. Looked again. Could there be something more? Could the invisible girl become something else? She didn't know it yet, but that quiet night was the start of something much louder. A revolution not in the world around her, but in the world within. The next morning, Mira woke up with a strange feeling, a lingering curiosity, like the aftertaste of a dream she couldn't quite remember. The videos she'd watched the night before played in the back of her mind, their words echoing between her thoughts. The way you show up tells the world how to treat you. Style is not vanity, it's silent confidence. You are allowed to be seen. They weren't just motivational slogans anymore. They felt like gentle provocations. And Mira couldn't unhear them. She padded into the bathroom and flicked on the light. The mirror reflected the usual image. Sleepy eyes, hasn't combed her hair in 2 days, and her "I only wear this at home" t-shirt with a faded design of a cartoon llama on it. She stared for a moment. There was a softness to her face she'd never bothered to notice. Her cheekbones were delicate, her lips naturally pink, her lashes long enough to touch the top of her glasses if she wore mascara. Not that she ever did. She touched her face lightly. No, she wasn't ugly. Just hidden. She reached for her phone and opened the YouTube history. The algorithm had already taken the hint. Her feed was now a gallery of beauty transformations, fashion tips, and self-esteem building talks. Mira clicked on one. How to dress for confidence. 5 simple changes. The woman on screen was magnetic, not loud, not fake. Just sure. Sure of who she was, sure of her worth. She talked about fit, color, body language. Even if you're scared on the inside, she said, wear the version of yourself that makes you feel powerful. Confidence is an outfit, too. Mira paused the video and looked back at her reflection. Her current outfit whispered, "Don't look at me." Her work wardrobe wasn't much different, all neutrals, all too big, like she was trying to disappear into them. Maybe it was time to stop shrinking. That afternoon, after work, Mira did something wildly out of character. She didn't go straight home. Instead, she took a detour into a boutique near the train station. One she'd passed 100 times but never entered. The window display boasted mannequins in stylish blouses, wrap dresses, and fitted skirts. A world she never thought belonged to her. She hesitated at the door. Her hand hovered over the handle. People like her didn't go into places like this. But then she remembered the words. You are allowed to be seen. She stepped inside. The boutique smelled like vanilla and new fabric. A friendly sales assistant in a mustard yellow jumpsuit smiled at her. Looking for anything special today? Mira cleared her throat, her voice barely above a whisper. Just browsing. But her eyes had already landed on something. It was a navy blue dress, simple but elegant. A wrap style, short enough to show her knees, cinched at the waist with a subtle gold buckle. Nothing flashy, but something about it made her heart beat faster. She touched the fabric. Soft, smooth, expensive looking. Want to try it on? The assistant asked gently. Mira hesitated. I don't usually wear dresses like that. That's the best reason to try it, she said with a wink. Minutes later, Mira stood in the fitting room, staring at the woman in the mirror. The navy blue dress clung to her just right. Not too tight, not too loose. It highlighted her curves in a way she'd never seen before. She turned slightly to the side, then to the other, blinking in disbelief. Was that really her? Her hands trembled a little as she smoothed the fabric over her hips. She looked taller, lighter, alive. And then it happened, the smallest smile. Just a flicker. But it came from a place of recognition, like she was meeting herself for the first time. I'll take it, she said. Back at home, she hung the dress carefully in her closet, right in the front, where she could see it. No more hiding it behind baggy blazers or beige cardigans. She made herself a cup of tea, curled into her usual spot on the couch, and opened her laptop. Not for work this time, but to watch more. She watched videos about posture, confidence, walking with purpose, speaking up. She ordered a hair mask online, added a lipstick to her cart, then browsed Pinterest for hairstyle ideas. The old Mira would have thought this vain. The new Mira, or the one emerging, realized it wasn't about vanity at all. It was about visibility. Before bed, she returned to the mirror. No dress. No makeup. Just Mira again. But something had changed. There was a light in her eyes. A quiet resolve. She didn't know exactly where this path would lead, if it would last, if she'd be able to silence the doubts when they came. But for the first time in years, she felt a little excited about waking up. Tomorrow, she would wear the navy dress. Tomorrow, she would walk into work like she belonged there. Not just at her desk, but in the room. Because the mirror didn't lie. And finally, she was ready to believe it. The navy blue dress was still hanging in her closet the next morning, pristine and waiting like a secret. Mira stood in front of it, towel wrapped around her, hair dripping. The October sun filtered through her small apartment window, casting a golden stripe across the hem of the fabric. She reached out and ran her fingers across the material. It felt like a promise. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Let's do this." The thought of wearing it to work made her pulse quicken. But under the nervous flutter was something else, anticipation. A small, brave voice inside her whispered, "You're allowed to feel good about yourself." She blow-dried her hair for the first time in weeks. Not just a rushed, careless dry, but a full styling session. She parted it slightly off-center and curled the ends, creating soft waves that framed her face. It took longer than expected, and she burned her finger twice, but when she was done, she looked polished. Next came the dress. It slid on like a second skin. Fitted but not tight, elegant but not loud. She adjusted the neckline, then tied the wrap around her waist just a little tighter, watching her silhouette change in the mirror. Her usual slouch was gone. She stood taller. Shoulders back. Chin up. Mira reached for the lip tint she'd bought online 2 nights ago. A warm coral shade. Subtle, but enough to wake up her face. She blinked at herself, then tried a smile, not too wide, just enough to see if her lips still knew how. They did. By the time she left her apartment, Mira didn't feel like the old Mira in new clothes. She felt like someone new, someone she might actually want to be. The walk to work was different. She felt the difference before she even reached the lobby. For the first time, heads turned. It wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no movie scene freeze frames. Just a series of second glances, subtle smiles, double takes. She stepped into the elevator and noticed the young intern who usually stared at his shoes suddenly look up and stammer. Hi. Good morning." "Morning," she replied, then stood beside him, eyes ahead, a tiny smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. By the time she reached her floor, Myra's nerves had shifted into a strange thrill. As she walked down the hallway, she heard someone whisper, "That's Mira Dawson, right?" And someone else reply, "Wait, seriously? That's her?" She sat at her desk like normal, opened her laptop, logged into her dashboard. But nothing felt normal. Even the computer screen seemed brighter. "Mira," a voice called. She looked up to see Diane from accounting standing in front of her desk, holding a paper cup from the cafe downstairs. "Hey," Diane said, blinking. "Wow, you look great today. Did you do something different?" Mira smiled, heartbeat quickening. "Just thought I'd try something new." "Well, it's working. You look amazing." She thanked her, trying to act casual, but the compliment lit her up from the inside out. All morning, people who'd never spoken to her before stopped by her desk. Small conversations. Smiles. One even asked where she got her dress. She answered modestly. But inside, Mira was on fire. It wasn't just about the attention, although it felt good. It was the shift. The way people looked at her now, as if she had stepped into focus. And more importantly, the way she looked at herself. That evening, Mira went home and pulled out a notebook she hadn't used since college. She opened a blank page and wrote across the top in block letters. Operation Glow Up. She drew a line under it. Underneath, she made a list. Hair appointment. Learn basic makeup, YouTube. Find clothes that fit. Posture equals confidence. Stop apologizing for speaking. Stop apologizing, period. She paused, pen hovering, then wrote. Don't shrink anymore. Mira spent the next few days in a whirlwind of discovery. She ordered new clothes. Not a whole new wardrobe, just pieces that felt like her if she had never been afraid. Tailored slacks. Pencil skirts. Blouses with color. She scheduled a haircut, her first in over a year, and let the stylist guide her into a soft, stylish lob that framed her face beautifully. Every night, she watched tutorials, how to do a soft glam eye, how to walk in heels without looking like a baby giraffe, how to own a room without saying a word. Her YouTube history transformed. Her browser was full of tabs like power dressing for work and building self-esteem from the inside out. But Mira wasn't copying anyone. She was choosing, curating, becoming. 2 weeks into her glow-up, Mira walked into the office in a soft pink dress with structured shoulders and nude pumps that clicked confidently on the floor. Her makeup was subtle but radiant, her hair perfectly curled at the ends. People greeted her now by name. They noticed her, listened when she spoke. But it wasn't just them. It was him, Daniel Rain, the CEO. She caught him looking. Not once, several times. Once in the hallway, once in the break room when she passed him by, and once, unmistakably, during a presentation where she sat at the back, taking notes. He looked up. Their eyes met. He didn't look away. He smiled. Myra's heart thudded like a drum in her chest, but she held the gaze. Lifted her chin. Gave him a soft, confident smile back. She didn't need him to notice her. But the fact that he did, that was just icing on the cake. That night, Mira stood in front of the mirror again, but this time not to judge or question or critique. She just looked. And this time, the woman looking back was no stranger. She looked like someone who belonged. Like someone ready. Raintech's executive boardroom was a beast of glass and marble, designed to impress. The walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The table, long, dark, and sleek, could seat 20, though only 12 chairs were ever filled at a time. The lighting was clinical, the silence almost reverent. You didn't speak in this room unless spoken to. Mira had never been in it. Until today. She had just finished presenting her team's Q4 predictive model to a small internal group when an email pinged on her screen. Subject line, Executive Presentation Request. And the sender? Daniel Rain. Her first reaction wasn't excitement. It was panic. She stared at the email for a solid minute, rereading it like it might change if she blinked hard enough. Mira, impressive projections in the latest report. I'd like you to present your findings to the executive team tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Let me know if you need anything. He'd signed it Daniel, not Mr. Rain. Just Daniel. Her stomach flipped. The next morning, Mira chose her outfit with surgical precision. A fitted emerald green blouse tucked into a high-waisted black skirt. The color brought out the hazel in her eyes, and the silhouette said professional, without hiding her femininity. A touch of eyeliner. A swipe of bold lipstick. As she entered the executive floor, a security guard she'd never spoken to before nodded with respect. When she stepped into the boardroom, the chatter died down. A few heads turned. She felt the shift, the subtle current of curiosity and recognition in the room. They weren't used to seeing her here. But Daniel didn't look surprised at all. He was already seated at the head of the table, a sleek tablet in front of him, a glass of water to his right. His black suit fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his frame. His watch glinted under the recessed lighting. Their eyes met. No smile this time, just a look. Direct. Measuring. Intense. Mira felt it like static electricity across her skin. "Miss Dawson," he said with a slight nod. "Please begin when you're ready." Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and steady. She'd rehearsed the night before, but standing here, in the room in front of him, was something else. Still, she refused to shrink. She explained her model, her assumptions, her logic. She anticipated every question. She owned the table. And Daniel watched her the entire time. Not distractedly. Not politely. He watched her with interest. Real interest. The kind that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. When she finished, the CFO clapped softly. Another executive gave a low whistle of approval. A few others murmured in agreement. But Daniel? He didn't speak right away. Instead, he closed his tablet slowly, laced his fingers together, and said, "You've just changed how we look at next quarter." Mira blinked. "Thank you, sir." "Daniel," he corrected gently. He stood. "Walk with me." The hallway outside the boardroom was quiet, just the distant hum of the city through the windows. Mira walked beside him, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. "I've read your work before," he said, hands in his pockets. "Quietly brilliant. You've been underutilized." She didn't know what to say. Her heart was thudding. He looked at her again, sideways this time, as if reading a line of code written in her expression. "You've changed." There it was. Not a question. A statement. Simple. Honest. "I've started investing in myself," she replied, choosing her words carefully. He gave a small smile. "Smart investment. Pays off fast." There was a pause. She could feel the air between them shift, not heavy, but charged. He stopped walking near the edge of the balcony hallway that overlooked the lobby 4 floors below. "Would you consider sitting in on next month's strategy sessions?" he asked, turning to face her fully. "I'd like to hear your perspective firsthand." "Me?" she asked, genuinely caught off guard. "Yes. You." His tone was amused now, but not condescending. "You don't have to say yes. But I think it's time people heard you." Mira swallowed the disbelief rising in her throat. "I'd be honored." He nodded once. Then, before turning to leave, he added, "And Mira?" She looked up. "That color looks good on you." Then he was gone. Back at her desk, Mira sat for a long moment, stunned. The entire interaction had been surreal. She was being invited to strategy sessions. She'd caught the attention of the CEO. And not just his professional attention. The way he'd looked at her, it wasn't just about reports and revenue. There was something more in that gaze. Appreciation. Admiration. Maybe even interest. But Mira wasn't about to fall into some fantasy. She wasn't a girl who got carried away because a handsome man said she looked good in green. Still, she couldn't help but touch her blouse as she sat down, fingertips brushing the fabric where his eyes had lingered. And in that moment, one truth became unshakably clear. She wasn't invisible anymore. The company gala invitation had arrived in a sleek, silver envelope with the Raintech logo embossed in gold. Most employees received a digital version. Myra's was hand-delivered by her manager with a nervous smile and a hint of curiosity. "You're on the list," she said, watching Myra's reaction carefully. "Executive guests only." Mira held the envelope like it might melt in her hands. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake." Her manager chuckled. "Seems like someone important took notice." The words hung in the air long after the conversation ended. Mira stood in front of her full-length mirror 2 nights later, alone in her apartment, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. She wore a deep red cocktail dress with an off-the-shoulder neckline and a slit that hinted, not screamed. It was form-fitting but tasteful, chosen carefully after 4 boutique visits and a last-minute tailoring session that had her standing on a pedestal while a seamstress pinned fabric around her thighs. Her hair was swept into soft waves, pinned to one side. A pair of gold drop earrings shimmered with every slight movement of her head. Her makeup was clean but daring. Winged eyeliner, a confident sweep of highlighter, and bold red lips that matched her dress perfectly. For the first time in her adult life, she didn't feel like she was playing dress-up. She felt powerful. Still, as she stood in her heels, clutch in hand, her nerves betrayed her. What if no one talks to you? What if they think you're a joke? What if he doesn't even notice? She breathed through the doubt, one hand resting on her abdomen like she could press confidence into her skin. Then she squared her shoulders, turned off the light, and left. The gala was held at a luxury downtown hotel, a grand ballroom with glittering chandeliers, waiters in white gloves, and a jazz band playing smooth, velvety chords near the entrance. Women floated across the room in evening gowns. Men sipped champagne from long-stemmed glasses, their suits fitted like armor. Mira stepped in, handed her coat to a concierge, and took her first steps into the golden light of the room. Eyes turned. Conversations paused. It was subtle, but she felt it, a ripple through the crowd. Not because she was flashy, but because she was unexpected. She was the girl who sat quietly behind spreadsheets, now commanding a space built for power players. And then she saw him. Daniel Rain stood near the back of the room, speaking to a group of executives. He was dressed in a classic black tuxedo, bow tie perfectly straight, his usual air of dominance wrapped in tailored elegance. He laughed at something one of the men said, the sound low and smooth. Then, almost like a sixth sense, his gaze lifted. And found her. It happened in a single moment, but it hit her like a wave. His smile faded. His expression shifted, from pleasant engagement to something else entirely. Something quiet. Intense. His eyes swept over her, slow and deliberate, stopping at her neckline, then her lips, then her eyes. Myra's breath caught in her throat. He said something to the group, an excuse, and then started walking toward her, cutting through the crowd like a man who owned the floor. "Mira," he said as he reached her, his voice lower than usual, as if meant for her alone. "Mr. Rain," she replied with a smile, unable to help the slight quiver of amusement in her tone. He raised an eyebrow. "Daniel," he reminded her softly, "you're not just an analyst anymore." She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but held her gaze steady. "I wasn't just an analyst before." That earned her a real smile, a quiet one that touched his eyes. "You're right," he said. "You were always more. Some of us are just late to notice." Before she could respond, a waiter appeared with a tray. Daniel plucked 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to her. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. They clinked. The crystal chimed like a secret. They stood off to the side of the ballroom, under soft lighting that made her dress glow and his jaw look sharper than usual. Conversation came easily, not about work, but about everything else. Books, travel, even a shared hatred of networking events. "I never realized you had such a dry sense of humor," Daniel said after she made a deadpan joke about marketing budgets. "I never had anyone to talk to," she replied. His smile faded slowly. "That's going to change." He didn't touch her. Not even casually. But the tension between them crackled, unspoken but undeniable. It wasn't just flirtation. It was mutual respect layered with curiosity, interest, and something that felt heavier, like potential. Mira noticed the stares. People whispered behind glasses. She heard her name once, twice. Phrases like, "Isn't that the girl from analytics?" And "When did she get invited to these events?" But for the first time, the whispers didn't make her shrink. They made her stand taller. Later that night, she stepped out onto the balcony for some air. The city lights sparkled below, and the cool wind tugged gently at her hair. She stood alone for only a moment. Then he joined her. No words, just silence between them as they looked out over the skyline. His presence beside her was warm. Steady. After a moment, he spoke. "Do you know what I thought when I saw you walk in tonight?" She turned to him, one brow raised. "That I don't belong here?" "No," he looked directly at her. "I thought," she owns the room. Mira blinked. He wasn't flattering her. He wasn't trying to impress. He was telling the truth. And just like that, the old Mira, the one who thought she wasn't enough, not pretty enough, not bold enough, took another step back into the shadows where she belonged. She smiled, turned back to the view, and whispered, "It's about time." Mira had never walked into work feeling tension in the air. Until now. It started subtly the Monday after the gala. Sidelong glances from her co-workers, conversations that stopped the moment she entered a room, coffee cups paused midair. People stared too long, whispered too low. The buzz had begun before she even sat down at her desk. She was with Daniel Rain the whole night. He invited her personally. You know what that means. It's always the quiet ones. She's glowing up for the boss, let's be real. Mira heard it. Not directly. But she felt it. Her desk, once a peaceful little island, now felt like the center of a very noisy, invisible storm. The first few hours of the day, she tried to brush it off. She dove into work, headphones in, spreadsheets glowing. But it didn't help. Not really. Because the whispers weren't about her work. They were about her worth. At lunch, she sat in the break room alone, not by choice. Her usual few acquaintances now passed her with hesitant smiles or awkward nods. She was no longer invisible, but she wasn't accepted either. She stirred her tea slowly, letting the spoon clink against the porcelain mug, each sound echoing louder than it should have. Got a minute? She looked up. It was Dana from Data Strategy, one of the few colleagues Mira had respected for her intelligence and work ethic. Sure, Mira replied, sitting up straighter. Dana sat across from her, her expression unreadable. Just want you to know, some people are talking. Mira gave a soft laugh. I noticed. Dana tilted her head. They think you're using your looks. That may be the bosses. Mira held up her hand. Let me stop you right there. Dana blinked. I've worked here for 4 years, Mira said, voice low and steady. I've built every model, hit every deadline, fixed more systems than I can count. No one looked at me twice. No one cared what I had to say. But the second I put on a fitted dress and sit next to Daniel at one gala, suddenly it's assumed I flirted my way into relevance. Dana lowered her gaze. I've earned every step I've taken, Mira continued. Every upgrade in my wardrobe. Every drop of confidence I've gained. It's not a bribe. It's a reflection of who I've always been. You just didn't see it until now. Silence hung between them. Finally, Dana leaned back, studying her. That was well said. Mira raised an eyebrow. Would it have been well said if I was still in glasses and a cardigan? A tiny smile curved Dana's lips. Touché. She stood, and before leaving, she added, for what it's worth. I see you now. And it's not the dress. The rest of the week, Mira doubled down. Not to prove the gossip wrong, but to prove herself right. She showed up to meetings early. She spoke with clarity and conviction. When a senior analyst botched a forecast, she respectfully corrected the formula during the presentation, earning a quiet nod from the head of finance. By Thursday, Daniel called her into his office. His corner suite was lined with glass and muted tones, a minimalist's paradise. But there were books too, and a few plants she hadn't noticed before. Personal touches that softened his otherwise intimidating space. He stood as she entered. You've stirred the hive, he said, not unkindly. Mira didn't flinch. I know. He gestured for her to sit. And yet here you are. Head held high. Better dressed than I am, I might add. She allowed herself a soft smile. The whispers were inevitable. Does it bother you? It would have, she admitted. But now I see it clearly. People are uncomfortable when the narrative changes. Especially when it's someone like me, someone they thought they could define. Daniel studied her. And what are you now? She met his gaze. Redefined. A beat passed. Then another. He smiled, not wide, not smug, just proud. Would you like to lead the client strategy team for the upcoming pivot project? Mira blinked. That's a huge role. You're already doing half the work. The title would just catch up to the reality. She hesitated, but not from fear. She was simply absorbing it. This moment. This validation. I'd be honored, she said. The announcement went out Friday afternoon. Mira Dawson appointed acting lead for client strategy integration. It hit the internal newsletter like a thunderclap. Some were shocked. Others scoffed. But many, especially the quieter ones, silently nodded. Mira saw the looks of respect from younger female interns, the way 2 junior analysts started dressing a little differently the next week. She had become more than gossip. She had become an example. That night, Mira walked home instead of taking a cab. It was autumn, and the wind nipped at her coat, but it felt good. Real. Like shedding the week off her shoulders with every step. She passed a window and caught her reflection, backlit by city lights, her hair tousled, her expression calm. No fear. No pretending. She smiled, because she had broken the stereotype. And the only thing she had to thank for it was the fact that she finally stopped asking permission to exist. The office was quiet when Mira stepped into the innovation wing, her heels clicking softly against the marble floors, echoing through the vast modern space. This floor had once been off-limits to her. Executive territory. A glass sanctuary for visionaries, board members, and decision-makers. Mira used to ride the elevator without looking up at the button marked 30. It didn't belong to people like her, or so she thought. Now, her name was printed on the glass door at the end of the hallway. Mira Dawson, Director, Client Strategy and Analytics. It still took her breath away when she saw it. Inside, the space was alive with quiet energy. Developers tapping at touch screens, designers reviewing mock-ups, strategists sketching out future concepts on digital whiteboards. Mira moved among them, not as a visitor, but as a leader. She didn't hover. She didn't over-explain. She spoke clearly, listened better, and when she laughed, it was easy and unrestrained. The confidence she had once faked had long since become muscle memory. That afternoon, she had a private meeting scheduled with Daniel. His calendar entry simply read, "Roof 4 p.m. Not a meeting room. Not a boardroom. The roof." Mira smiled. When she stepped out onto the rooftop garden, she found him there, standing with his back to her, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled, the late afternoon sun casting warm gold across the city skyline. Fall leaves rustled in the wind around the glass railings. He turned when he heard her footsteps. His face lit up in that subtle way she had come to recognize, not with a wide grin, but with softness around the eyes. A quiet shift. Something only for her. "I almost thought you wouldn't come," he said. "I was tempted," Mira replied, raising a brow. "But then I remembered I outrank half your board now." He chuckled, stepping closer. "You do. And thank God for it." They stood there for a moment, shoulder to shoulder, watching the city breathe below them. The sounds of distant sirens, horns, and footsteps all blurred beneath the wind. "I wanted to show you something," Daniel said. He reached into the pocket of his coat, which was draped over a nearby chair, and pulled out a slim black envelope. Myra's heart skipped. He handed it to her without saying a word. She opened it slowly. Inside was an invitation. Simple, elegant, gold embossed. A formal launch for Rainteca's global expansion strategy, to be announced in Paris. Her name was listed on the speaker's panel, right beneath Daniel's. Mira stared at it. "You're not just leading the initiative," he said quietly. "You're representing the company." A beat passed. Then she looked at him. "And you? I'll be beside you," he said. "But you'll be front and center." She nodded slowly, trying to swallow the wave of emotion rising in her chest. She had worked so hard. Not just to climb, but to belong. And now she was being handed not just a seat at the table, but a microphone. Daniel watched her for a long moment. Then he added, "You know, it started with the dress." Mira smiled, glancing down. Today, she wore that navy blue dress. The first one. The one that started it all. She had kept it, not out of nostalgia, but because it reminded her of who she had decided to become. "That dress didn't change me," she said softly. "It just reminded me I was allowed to exist fully." He stepped a little closer. "You didn't just change your clothes, Mira," he said. "You changed the room. You changed me." There was a pause. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out something small. Velvet. Black. A box. Myra's breath caught. He opened it. Inside, a ring. Understated. Elegant. A solitaire diamond on a thin band of gold. Nothing flashy. Nothing loud. Just timeless, like everything about her. Her eyes widened. "Daniel." He stepped forward, took her hand gently, and said, "I know this isn't a fairy tale. I know you got here by your own grit, not because of me. But if you'll have me, I want to build something real. Not just in business. In life." Wind tugged at her hair as she looked down at the ring. Then back at the man who had once been the distant, untouchable CEO, now standing before her, vulnerable. She didn't cry. Instead, she smiled. That full, radiant, knowing smile. The one she used to practice in the mirror, back when she didn't believe it belonged to her. "You're right," she whispered. "This isn't a fairy tale." Then she took the box, held it to her heart, and added, "It's better." That night, as she stood alone in front of her mirror once again, Mira looked at herself differently. Not because of the ring, or the title, or the attention, but because she had claimed every piece of herself. The mirror no longer showed a girl hiding. It showed a woman who had dared to show up, in dresses, in meetings, in love, completely. And she knew, deep in her bones, that it was never just about the clothes. It was about the choice. To stop waiting for permission. And start being the woman she was always meant to be. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.